Good morning and welcome to Live from FM 91, conversation and performance with some of the area's finest musicians and visiting guest artists. I'm your host, Brad Cresswell. We're coming to you today from the Dana Performance Studio here at WGTE. Well, I've got two wonderful young musicians here in the studio with me today. It's a real treat to welcome the violinist Adam Major. Hello, Adam.
Hello.
And we also have flutist Hannah Schultz. Hello, Hannah.
Hi.
And your teachers are also here, so no pressure, right? You are both members of the Toledo Symphony Youth Orchestras, is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, now there are several orchestras involved. There are a couple of different ones. Are you both in the same one, or are you in different ones?
So, I am principal second violin in the Philharmonic Orchestra. That is the highest of the three orchestras. You have concert strings, which is the lower level orchestra. Then you have symphonic, which is the middle orchestra. And then there's Philharmonic. So there's three different, and I'm in Philharmonic.
Okay. How about you, Hannah?
I'm principal flute of the symphonic orchestra.
So we have two very good musicians here. We're going to hear you play a little bit. We're going to start with you, Adam. And before we get to that, let's hear a little bit about you and your history with the violin. I mean, why did you decide to start playing that instrument?
Well, I've been playing violin for about 7 and 8 years. I'd say I sort of gained interest in the violin almost immediately. I think quite literally one day I told my parents I want to play the violin, and we went to the music store and bought a violin.
Wow.
So, and I messed around with it. I wasn't any good. I was still a little kid. But
any good yet.
But
that was Sonsoles, your teacher, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then I had my first lesson with my previous teacher, Miss Jen Burns. So we had bought a full-size violin, so that's the violin that I use right now. So it's meant for obvious adults and older kids. So you can imagine fourth grade me, who was really small, trying
with
to
the big
hold
violin.
With the huge violin. So we need to go all the way from a full size to a quarter size. So I eventually just started my violin journey. Then once Sonsoles became my teacher, everything just exponentially increased.
Yeah. She's sitting right here and smiling right now as you speak. So.
Well, I was able to progress really fast. We have Suzuki books. The teachers here teach the Suzuki method, so right. I'm not going to say exactly what the Suzuki method is. I just know that I need to memorize the songs and do good at recitals. It's a lot different for me now, but when I was younger, the whole thing was just be sure to memorize your piece and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
But I actually did join the TSYO in 8th grade. I was part of the concert strings orchestra, one of the first violins. That was my first real experience with an orchestra of sorts. It was a great experience. It was fun. We got to perform at the Peristyle, which is a wonderful venue to perform at. Yeah. Then, unfortunately, COVID-19 hit. Then I took a 1.5 year hiatus from the violin. I had just gradually lost interest with the violin. And so unfortunately I had to part with Sonsoles for 1.5 years, and I kind of regret doing that. But
she's still smiling, by the way.
My sophomore year of high school, which was last year, I have great directors at the school. My choir director and my band director. My choir director was Mr. Sneed, and my band director, Mr. Kuzdal. So I still am in the band and choir at Clay.
That's the high school that you go to, and Hannah also goes to Clay. Yeah.
Right, it's a great school. Then for our fall concert, we do many different concerts throughout the year, and this particular one, Mr. Sneed had asked me to play a solo on the violin. Now, I hadn't picked that violin up in a year, so I had to kind of relearn the piece. But I don't know, something about him asking me to play the violin again just sort of sparked my interest. Then I told my parents, I kind of regret stopping lessons before stopping violin, because my interest in the violin had just suddenly come right back. Then I started violin lessons back in January of 2022 last year. Then I also decided I would like to try out for the TSYO again after a 2-year break. So we started on Vivaldi's Concerto in A minor, the first movement on that. That's what we worked on for a while. I had, as Sonsoles would know, I had a lot of rhythm issues, but that's a separate topic for another day. But anyways, I had prepared that piece, and I had just started honing in my skills again, and I grew a lot again. Yeah. I had kind of transformed in that sense. Then I had auditioned into the Philharmonic. Our auditions were due that June, so I had to prepare my piece and get my skills back up for that audition. I was only shooting for symphonic, so when the audition results came back out, I was looking at the list. I first looked at symphonic to make sure I was hopefully in symphonic. So I'm like, oh no, I'm not on symphonic. But then I decided to check Philharmonic anyways. And then I looked down first violins just to see who got in. Then right at the top was Adam Major. And I was like, wow. I was jumping for joy for 5 straight minutes at my house. Luckily,
I feel like we could make a movie out of your life story so far, right?
Yes. But it's been a long road, but
yeah. Well, you brought some Vivaldi in to play this morning for our listeners. What are we going to hear?
We're going to be hearing the Violin Concerto in G minor. That is the first movement of the piece. Okay,
great. Well, I'll let you get up there to the microphone, and you are accompanied today by Amy Chang, whom we know as cellist of the Toledo Symphony Orchestra. She's at the piano, and Adam Major is at the violin. Music of Antonio Vivaldi. You're on FM 91. Music of Antonio Vivaldi here on Live from FM 91. Violinist Adam Major with Amy Chang at the piano. We heard Vivaldi's Concerto in G minor. That's a wonderful performance, Adam. And your cohort here joining us this morning is Hannah Schultz. Hannah is a flutist, also a student at Clay High School, and a member of one of the Toledo Symphony Youth Orchestras. I should mention they are giving a concert on March 19th, yeah? Amy and Sonsoles, you're both here, and I haven't let you chime in yet, so you want to talk just a little bit about your work with these students and with other students and how you sort of balance that with your performing career, because you're both performers.
Yeah, so I, in addition to being a violin teacher at the School of Music, I am also the School of Music coordinator, but I also perform violin with the Toledo Symphony. We specialize in the Suzuki method in the school. Adam did not seem to know much about it, but
he will by the end of this show, right?
He does know a lot about it just by thinking of how his lessons take place, and so part of the Suzuki method centers on the parent or a caregiver attending the lessons with them and becoming sort of their coach at home. So we always talk about a Suzuki triangle. So based on that, the teacher can build a relationship with the parent and help them help their child at home. And so that growth that Adam is talking about, that exponential growth, it's a joint work of the teacher and the parent collaborating to help their
I think that's wonderful to get families involved and get caregivers involved with their children or their wards.
Yes, because it becomes a team thing, and and parents grow to love it, and to they know a lot about it rather than that thing you do kind of thing. So it's a special bond that forms.
Speaking as a parent myself, I can totally understand what you're saying. We also have Amy Heritage here. Amy, you are a flutist with the Toledo Symphony, and like Sonsoles, you're also a teacher. You work with students, and you work with Hannah specifically, and you're both going to be sitting with each other, I understand, at the concert, which is taking place on March 19th, right?
That's right. Sunday, March 19th at 4 o'clock at the Peristyle. It's a free concert. And that's kind of the highlight of the year for the relationship between the Toledo Symphony and the Toledo Youth Orchestra. all the students in the youth orchestra have to study privately in order to be in the orchestra, and many of them study with members of the Toledo Symphony. We also coach them throughout the year. We'll come down to Hull Prairie where the kids rehearse and be with the flute section or the woodwind section or the violins and coach them throughout the year. But our culminating event is March 19th when we meet each other on the stage of the Peristyle and present a concert together, I think under the direction of Elaine Trudell, who is our music director of the Toledo Symphony. Yeah. So we'll be there playing some Carmen and some Star Wars and some Dvorak. And it's such a cool moment, especially some of our players of the Toledo Symphony will have their children on stage with them who are members of the youth orchestra. So our tuba player, Dave Saltzman, will be sitting pretty close to his son, who's the principal bass player in the orchestra. Our 2 clarinetists will have their daughters in the violin section and the cello section. Adam will be sitting up at the front of the second violins with Merwin Sue because he's principal second in the orchestra, and Hannah will be sitting with me in the row of flute players, and that's a really great moment for them to see what we do and for us to share. And I always say the second flute is the best seat in the house. So I'm excited for Hannah. This is Hannah's first year in the youth orchestra. So I'm excited for Hannah to be on stage with me and to feel that, just be surrounded by so much music making by so many wonderful musicians.
Hannah, you've been sitting there very quietly, very nice and reserved. We haven't really given you a chance to talk yet, but what can you tell us about your experience with the flute? I mean, when I was young, I always wanted to play the flute. I was discouraged because everybody wanted to play the flute. Was it the same for you? Did you have that kind of, I want to play the flute moment? Or did it kind of grow on you? What were the circumstances for you?
Well, I started the flute in 5th grade when Oregon City Schools starts their music program, specifically band, and my mother played flute during college and in high school. So she said, I have a flute and I think you should play flute. So I'm like, all right, that'll do. And then actually she also played piccolo. So I started playing with the piccolo in 5th grade, but then I stuck with flute because gotta learn one before the other, typically. You
inherited it.
Yes, so I inherited my mom's flute, and I played that up until actually this past year. For my 17th birthday, I got an open hold flute from Reading, and it's beautiful. I love it very much.
So you're playing an open hold flute, which is like a real flute.
Yes.
Let's hear more of your story. I mean, how did you get from there to here, as it were?
Well, I started band in 5th grade, like I said, and for the most part, I stuck with just the band class. In 7th grade, I did solo ensemble, and then in 8th grade, I did an academic band at Bowling Green State University. Then there was kind of that COVID time in my freshman year, I just did solo ensemble. After that, I really got into it. So my junior year, I took a piece to contest, Die Taubenpost by Schubert. And shortly after that, I started doing private lessons. And that's when Miss Amy said, you should audition for the youth orchestra. Now, I had heard about that in the past, but I never did anything with it. So I'm like, sure, I'll do it. And then I auditioned, and then I got in. And I was also jumping for joy. I saw Adam later that day, and we're both rejoicing together at Clay.
High fives, yeah.
Oh, it was a fun time. So then now I do the youth orchestra. I'm in the honors band at Clay. And it's an overall fun experience. I really enjoy playing.
I'm interested, while I have you both here, if either one of you or both of you want to talk a little bit about how learning an instrument and having it be a part of your life at a young age, how that has affected you and what you do. I mean, for me, playing in the band and playing an instrument and having that idea of music in my life was so important because I wasn't into the whole sports scene. I wasn't into other things that kids might be into. I wonder what is the importance of music and the flute. Let's start with you, Hannah, and you can tell us a little bit about that.
See,
you don't care.
No, that is not true at all. Music is very important to my life. That's one of my favorite things about youth orchestra is because I'm able to connect with other kids that have the same passion for music. Whereas at school, not as many people have that, like you said.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's really like a uniting force when you have that passion for music. You're all in love with the same thing, and making music, it's expressing yourself in a way that you might not through athletics or other.
Not that there's anything wrong with any of those other pursuits. But,
no.
But music in particular is a wonderful way to express yourself and identify yourself. And speaking of which, we're going to hear from you, Hannah. You're performing music by Gabriel Fauré, yeah?
Yes, I'm performing a sight reading piece that he wrote for the Paris Conservatory called Morceaux de Concours.
Yeah, which basically means a competition piece, I think.
I believe so,
yeah,
yes.
If you translate that. So you are going to be accompanied by Amy, not playing the flute, Amy Heritage at the piano, and Hannah Schultz performing music of Gabriel Fauré. You're on FM 91. That's the flutist Hannah Schultz with Amy Heritage, her teacher, at the piano. They were performing music by Gabriel Fauré. We heard the concert piece, or the competition piece, rather, that he wrote for students auditioning for the Paris Conservatory back in the day. We should mention that the Toledo Symphony Youth Orchestras are giving a concert. We'll say it again. It's happening Sunday, March 19th at 4 o'clock p.m. at the Peristyle. And Amy, you were telling me that folks can audition for those orchestras as well if they're so inclined.
That will happen in the spring, and information about it will be available on the website starting in April.
Okay, great. So if people are interested, they can go to ToledoSymphony.com, find out more about that as of April. Well, we have one more piece for you today in the form of a duet. No pianos involved. This is just for flute and violin. An arrangement of a well-known aria from Wolfgang Mozart's opera, The Marriage of Figaro. This is Voi che sapete, music of Mozart, here on FM 91. Music of Mozart here in our Dana Performance Studio, violinist Adam Major with flutist Hannah Schultz. They performed an arrangement for those two instruments of Wolfgang Mozart's aria Voi che sapete, which comes from the opera The Marriage of Figaro. I want to thank both of you for coming in. You're both students at Clay High School. You've also been here talking with your teachers as well, Amy Heritage, Sonsoles Llodrá, and Adam Major, Hannah Schultz. Thanks to all of you for coming in this morning.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having us.
You've been listening to Live from FM 91. The broadcast engineer for our program is Chris Pfeiffer, with assistance from Logan Cooney. I'm your host and producer, Brad Cresswell. Thanks for joining us today here on your public radio station, FM 91.